Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. My name is Reuben, and I am here to review episode 8 of Pluribus, the Charm Offensive. Or just drop the Charm Offensive. And before I get into today's review, I want to let you guys know that you can listen to this wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, follow us on social medias at Nerd Soup. And if you want to check out our Patreon page, you can go ahead and check that out, where we review shows. We talked about the best video games of the 21st century. We talked about Task on HBO. And I'm currently doing a solo series where I review every episode of The American Revolution by Ken Burns. Good documentary. The tragedy of Benedict Arnold is really getting to me because he was such an outstanding general. But, he really fucked himself in the end there. I feel like she's teetering on Benedict Arnold. Similar personalities, volatile, smart. Makes some enemies based on her behavior. People don't really like being around them, and it's possible that she might give in to the enemy. She might join the hive, which does have some parallels to the British. I mean, the British, they all ate terrible food in order to stay alive. No offense to the British. Yeah, but this was, another good episode. And it's a show that there's been a lot of talk. I'm constantly seeing posts about people giving up on it or people complaining about how slow it is. It's really not something that's bothered me. In fact, every time I watch it, I'm surprised by how quickly the episodes go. And they are settling on about, 45-minute, 50-minute run times. So I think that's a sweet spot. Similar to how Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul ran when you factor in commercials. So I still don't have a problem with the pacing. And I think in this episode, the way that Vince is confirming a lot of the theories that people have had about the way the hive works, how they communicate, what the hive is trying to do, sort of a brainiac mission statement here, where they want to spread the virus to all of the other planets that have intelligent life, because we also learn in this episode that animals are not a part of the hive, which was really cute. Cute dog bear that he still stays loyal to Maxwell. So I continue to find the writing clever in that regard, where these reveals aren't being played for big dramatic effect, but they come naturally. It's through the conversation that Carol is having with Zosha, and still playing with this idea of whether or not Zosha can become an individual. There were a couple of moments in this episode where it felt like she was tapping in to the individuality that Zosha possessed before the hive came. And even going back to Zosha's introduction in the show, you have to wonder, what the hell was this character getting into? And she talks about living in the coastal city in Poland. I forget the way that they pronounced it, but it looks like a beautiful city just based on me looking it up on Google Maps. And mango ice cream, also my favorite. You get some of the backstory there of Zosha's childhood, and based on her age, you have to imagine this is pre and post 1989 that she's talking about, when Poland, the fall of communism, Poland opening up their country to Western markets and global capitalism. So she talks about how the ice cream man had more flavors after 1989. So maybe that's going to be a key element of Zosha's so-called awakening in the future, because she's sort of already experienced this, to where she went from a world where there weren't as many flavors of ice cream to where she has all these incredible choices, but, she still settles on one being her favorite. So I think that's going to be, a valuable piece of information about her backstory and how that's going to impact her journey moving forward. So yeah, that, the entire episode with the back and forth between Carol and Zosha, them spending time together, them bonding, Carol learning more and more about the hive in a way that just feels very natural. It's conversational. And you're not sure if Carol is falling for the charm offensive or if Zosha is falling for the charm offensive of Carol. So it's a fun little cat and mouse game that's going on between them. The episode begins with Manousos in the hospital, and this was a big topic of conversation that I really didn't touch on in the last episode, what was going to happen to Manousos after he's saved by the hive. I saw a couple of theories that they were going to basically incorporate him into the hive without his consent and maybe try and trick Carol. But I assumed that it was going to play out exactly how it did, that they would patch him up and he would not appreciate the help whatsoever, that he would wake up in the hospital in a bit of a tizzy, immediately would want to leave and continue caring for himself by himself with no help from the hive. And once again, they keep using the concept to play for laughs, especially when it comes to Manussos, him leaving all the money, him having this moral code. So when he leaves, the hive knows that he's going to want an itemized receipt for the full cost of his care. That continues to be funny to me, but we don't get a lot of focus on Manu here. We see him in the beginning. We also see him in the end. The series finale, the season finale is titled La Chica o El Mundo. So it looks like Carol's going to have to make a decision between saving the world or spending the rest of her life with Zosha. And I talked about the new information that we learned in this episode. A key piece is how the hive communicates. And that was an interesting scene, a beautiful scene as well, when they're overlooking the train with the sun in the background. And Zosha confirms that they communicate through electromagnetism, EM waves. Shout out to James Clerk Maxwell. So it's not anything that's beyond the realm of human understanding. It's a scientific concept. It's something that can be potentially manipulated. And I think it's no coincidence that the focus we get on Manu sees him tinkering with frequencies. So how is that going to tie together? We saw when he finds that one channel in which he can hear something happening that is just not staticky. So maybe that is going to be the role Manu plays and how they attempt to save the world, or how they attempt to maybe save some of these individuals, pluck out that individualism and put it back into their body through the manipulation of these frequencies. So that's interesting. And that's why Vince Gilligan, and the writers of this show, I shouldn't just credit Vince Gilligan. It's not just one man, but they set up this character and you're wondering, why the hell is there so much focus on him specifically? What is he doing tinkering with these radios? And then you just get a couple of lines of dialogue and you start to connect those dots where the picture becomes a bit more clear about where this show is heading in that regard. But also a very fascinating piece of information in that conversation between Carol and Zosha with the trains, when Carol says that she loves trains and the hive is not aware of that information. And that seems to be a reoccurring theme throughout this episode, is that the hive takes a particular interest in Carol because she is an artist, because she is putting ideas and concepts into the world that don't necessarily exist yet. That is the job of an artist. It's to create something new, to stimulate the minds of your audiences with surprises and jokes and plot twists and, creative decisions that impress the audience, that stimulate their minds. So in that moment, that was, surprising for Carol. It's surprising for the audience that it's not something the hive is already aware of. And Carol even says, I must have said this to somebody in the past. So it also points to the isolation of that character, that even though she was close with Helen was her wife's name, right? God, I've totally... Zosha is so hot that I've forgotten about Helen. I'm just like Carol. Just at the end of the day, me and Carol, just a couple of dogs. Scooby and Scrappy Doo. No, but that there are secrets to Carol. There are things that she likes that she's never shared with the world. So it's interesting that she was able to open up in this moment. You see the way that she's really falling for Zosha, and it is just so funny that they sent this hot chick to to manipulate Carol. For me, it would have been like LeBron. I'm just picking his mind about all the the great moments throughout his career. Like when he was blocked by Mario Hezonja. But yeah, it's hard to tell which way is it going. Like who's winning this tug of war? Is it the hive or is it Carol? And I think that's what's going to be fun about episode 9. I mentioned it with the title that there's going to be a hard choice for Carol to make. But I keep thinking about Vince Gilligan and the way that he always surprises you with his finales, where a character can be on the verge of a personal victory in the context of the story, and then the narrative takes an absolute left turn, and then you have to sit with that for a year until the show comes back. So I'm so excited for the finale, especially after this episode, because once again, it is really taking its time and building up to these moments and giving you these answers. I find it to be such a comfortable watch. I love when this show comes on every Thursday night at 9. I love just sitting with it, enjoying the images and enjoying the little the tasty nuggets that they're giving us step by step, not rushing through it, really taking their time. And, it's old school. I think it's paced in a way that reminds me of, shows, well, not necessarily shows, but really movies, movies from the late 60s, the 70s, when cinema was at its peak. I'm really pretentious. You should go and check out my 25 best movies of the 21st century video, because people are saying it's the most pretentious video ever made. So I'm definitely interested to see what the rating for this episode is, because episode 7, which may have been my favorite, just to be a contrarian, just to piss people off, and it was actually the lowest rated on IMDb. So I don't think this one is going to be much higher, but we'll see. The first scene between them was great. I thought it was really funny when she defends, or when she says that she's going to put the O'Keefe painting back, like anybody would care, like the Hive fucking cares. And her excuse is that she's protecting it just in case any of the buffalo end up running through the museum. So I found that to be funny. Once again, if it was me in Carol's position, they would see I would have LeBron's 4 championship trophies and his finals MVPs sitting behind me, and I'm just like, oh, I'm just protecting them. I don't know if any Jordan fans out there are gonna try and desecrate them. I don't know if Skip Bayless is part of the Hive mind, so I don't want him to do anything he'll regret. But that was funny too, them playing the board games. It feels like Zosha is letting Carol win at certain times, but then she takes the initiative. And throughout the episode, there was just certain facial expressions, certain remarks. When Zosha does win and she mocks Carol, she gives her the ha-ha, it feels like there's an individual inside of there. Or when they're playing croquet and Zosha keeps beating her, and Carol says, oh, it's because you're cheating. It's because you have the muscle memory of the entire hive mind, which is also interesting. It's not just the actual memories. It's just not the visual memories that they have, but it's the physical memory of maybe you don't have that same, maybe Zosha isn't a world-class athlete before this happened, but in a game like this, the technique, the stance, the proper weight, the finesse of knowing exactly how to hit the ball to make it go through the little upside down U thing. I've never played croquet, but they have that too, that they can pull from different places. Once again, Zosha can't do 360 dunks like LeBron James, but she could probably shoot. I guarantee she can shoot threes, because 3-pointers, it's all about muscle memory. Steph Curry, you wouldn't teach somebody how to shoot like Steph Curry, but he shoots the same way every single time, and that's why he's so good. If you want to teach somebody how to shoot properly, you teach them Klay Thompson. He's got the perfect elbow, the perfect L. So I'm sure she's absolutely money with that Klay Thompson form, if they were doing basketball. Once again, that's what we would be doing if I was Carol. But also the taunting, that when Carol is making the excuses, oh, you have all this information, and Zosha goes, maybe it's because you suck. And then they put the message on the screen, you suck, Carol. That actually made me laugh out loud. So the Hive is putting on their best manipulative face and personality here, to where you can't just keep being nice to Carol. You can't just keep dumping information facts on her. You have to tease her. You have to be a bit more human, have that playful back and forth that convinces Carol this is an actual relationship that's developing between the two of them. So it's a very strange relationship to watch develop because of that. You kind of almost feel yourself being lulled to sleep as well, where you forget about the hive mind. You forget about all of these other people that are inside of this one individual, even though they're confirming the different abilities they have because of that. But you start to feel comfortable with that person, or you start to feel comfortable with the idea that it's a real relationship between Carol and Zosha. But it's also Carol starting to understand how to play the game without losing her mind, without getting so angry and frustrated with the Hive, where she can get these bits of information, go back to the whiteboard and mark it down. She's, even Zosha's response to when Carol says, why do you still need trains? And she's like, well, for food. And she understands that, the way that she responded, the tone of her voice, they've become self-conscious over the way that they're sustaining life. And eventually Carol does get frustrated in this episode, saying, you guys are all dying, but you won't pick a piece of fruit. You guys are taking it too far. And it shows that there's a lot of similarities between the Hive and Manusos, to where they won't break this code for whatever reason, and we understand that. It's a very human aspect of the Hive, where we see the way humans can be very stubborn and rigid. Manusos, he's not part of the Hive mind whatsoever, but you could argue that's very Hive mind-like of him, not breaking this code, refusing the help. That his mission to save humanity would go a lot smoother if he just accepted their help. That he would have reached Carol before she started developing this more intimate relationship with Zosha. Typical romantic moment where Carol's really frustrated by Zosha and the Hive not wanting to pick an apple because they're starving, and she's airing out all these frustrations. They slowly get closer together, and Zosha makes the first move to kiss her, and totally understandable why she would fold. She's been completely isolated from any sort of human contact or intimacy for 2 months now, since this first started, since Helen passed away, and they do share the night together, which is interesting because it's like Carol, the entire show, has been trying to save the world, and now she says, fuck the world. Or now she does fuck the world. I think a large portion of the fan base got up and cheered when that happened, because people are really loving the chemistry between Carol and Zosha. So yeah, there you go, you pervs, you sickos, over here acting like I'm not one of them. But yeah, no, congrats to Carol and Zosha. Yeah, and it's just hard to determine, and I don't think that's, I think that's part of the fun of the show, is where you don't know where, it starts and stops. Carol's manipulation of the Hive versus how much she's actually enjoying this. When she asks Zosha, where do you live? Where do you sleep? And so I guess it's technically the first time she does sleep with all of them, not in a sexual way. But that was weird too. You wake up in the middle of the night, you have your arm on Zosha, you pull back and you realize, not only did I have my arm on Zosha, but I had my arm on everybody in the world. Everybody in the world can know that that's happening at that moment. So that was strange. Even the massages, when she's asking Zosha, you're saying the massage feels good, but does that mean everybody in the world can feel this all at once? And it seems like something where the Hive is aware of all of these things happening, and it feels like it's something that they can hone in on. Yeah, it's similar to a radio, to where you are simultaneously receiving all of these channels, but because of the dial, you can go to a specific one and get more details and more information about what's specifically happening on that channel. So it's similar with people, where it's basically you have 7 billion plus distinct channels all happening all at once that can be tapped into. Then we also see the moment when they're looking at the star Kepler. You have the planet Kepler 22b, that's where the signal originates from, and the master plan of the others to build a giant antenna to spread this across the world. I mentioned Brainiac at the top of the episode, but that's what it reminded me of. And it doesn't seem malicious, but I think if you're on the receiving end of that, especially if they do it without your consent, because for most people, it did happen without their consent. I think that does sort of get lost when people are talking about the Hive and their intentions, whether they're good or evil. Initially, they were dead set on spreading this to everybody without asking permission. It's just something that happened. Because the Hive has consciousness, because they're able to communicate on a higher level, there's also this sort of naturally occurring, you wouldn't question whether or not a virus is good or evil. You'd be looked at as an insane person. This flu is a bastard. He's doing this to me on purpose. How could you do this, flu? It's like, no, a flu is just a virus. It's just what it is. It's just a part of nature. So, when it comes to the ethics of it all, I don't think that's something that the Hive is too concerned about. But that's where, maybe you can break out one of these individuals by just overstimulating them with the ethics and the morals of this entire situation. But yeah, no, their game plan is right there in the open, which I'm sure the other 12 already knew about days ago. Carol is really, for the sake of a narrative, for the sake of the show, she's really slow walking these questions. You want to build up. You want some development here. You just don't want to jump the gun to all these answers, or else then you don't have a show. It could have been an email. I would say the best part of the episode, when Zosha, when she's talking about the mango ice cream, and it sort of snaps her back into her individuality there for a moment. And then it breaks because she realizes that Manussos is coming. But this whole effort by the Hive, by the others, to recreate the environment in which Carol first started writing, to bring that creative spark back to Carol so that she can continue writing. And it's interesting that this idea of, the Hive collectively seeing Carol as their favorite author, that they want to experience her stories because it's something new, that their whole goal is to learn and gobble up as much information as possible. But at a certain point, there's a limit to what you can learn if nothing new is being created. If there are no new inventions, if there are no new stories, if there's no new, if there's no new anything, you need that new. And that's what Carol is able to give them. And it's, the typical, the inspiration that helps bring back that creative spark. It's being back in a familiar environment. When you have writer's block, you go back to the beginning. You go to the places that help you stimulate those ideas. And at first it seems like it's working. Then Carol's, a bit weirded out by the situation. It's those reminders of the waiter, right? Bree, it was the waiter that was there initially. And then Carol asks, where was she before you brought her here? And then she says, oh, so she moved on with her life and essentially you forced her to come back. So it's the reminders of what's really happening here. So she's able to be tricked for a moment, but then she snaps back out of it. The one thing that is always going to be the ultimate muse is sexual gratifications. So they bang and then she wakes up the next morning and she's writing like a mad woman. She's got this new story. Zosha reads it. She absolutely loves it. And you wonder, is it because it's good or is it because it's something new? It's as simple as that. It's similar to when Carol was asking about the reception of her writing in one of the earlier episodes. And the Hive tells her, listen, your writing was very important to this individual because it practically saved her life. It gave her something to live for, which doesn't satisfy Carol because, she wants the Pulitzer. But it's similar to what's happening here with Zosha, where it's giving them something to look forward to, that they're eagerly anticipating what Carol is going to write next. That's very interesting. That's an interesting idea that they're playing with here, that a way to manipulate the Hive is to give them new information. Who's best suited to do that? It's somebody who writes slop. Because motherfuckers love slop, from all across the globe. You could be a world-renowned scientist, you still like reality TV. Daniel Day-Lewis, that's what they always say. His favorite thing to watch is reality TV. He loves Love Island. I love New York, Flavor of Love. I mean, eating healthy is fine every now and then, but, sometimes you need that high fructose corn syrup. Nice sleeve of Oreos, baby. Tall glass of milk. Ooh! Yeah, so I don't know, man. When people, I'm not trying to get too hung up on it, but when people are like, the show is slow, I feel like they drop these ideas on you and they make you go, ooh, wow, yeah, no, that's, I didn't think of that. And some people have been thinking of it, because some people are, they're just good at predicting shit. Also interesting that she gender swaps Reuben. So Reuben is now officially a woman in the next chapters of the Waikaro series. And Zosha, being such a fangirl, wondering, how did she do it? Oh, is it because of this magical thing that you introduced in one of the earlier books? Oh, no, I know, it's this. So that was cute. That was fun. And, it shows Carol opening up in a way that maybe she wasn't, or certainly she wasn't comfortable with before her relationship with Zosha and the Hive, making the decision to make Reuben a woman because that's initially what it was supposed to be. In a way, it's her embracing her sexuality through her art. She's no longer hiding the fact that she wanted Reuben to be a woman, that she's openly in love with a woman. She was openly, she was in love with Helen. Now it feels like she's in love with Zosha. And there was a funny joke there too, when she's asking Zosha, instead of we, can you just say I? And Zosha's struggling with it, and she's like, man, you have all the brain power in the world, and you can't figure out a single fucking pronoun. So I felt like that was a dig at some people. Also foreshadowing what was going to happen at the end of the episode, that the pronouns of Carol's main character would officially change. The episode it's giving you these nice moments. It's moments that it's like character development that, and not to say it goes over anybody's head, but it's a little moment that means a lot in the long run. But also so funny, just going back to the kiss, that Carol's complaining that they're distracting her because they know that she's never going to give up on finding a solution. And Zosha's like, God damn it, we know that you're never going to give up on trying to find a solution. So the best way to take us out of this fight is for me to kiss you. It never fails, right? All this tension, all this sexual tension that has been building up between them, and Zosha just goes for it. And then Carol is like, oh my God, how could you kiss me? Get back in here. Let's do it. Like I said, all the freaks, all the pervs, they're happy about it. I'm elated. Yeah, my boy Manu, him patching himself up, putting on the big Band-Aid, and then driving off to, he's in Mexico, right? That's where they show that he was at the border. So he's closing in, and Zosha is very worried about it. And once again, the fear in the hive of Manu coming to see Carol. The fear that sets in that moment when she realizes Manu is closing in is it's very telling that they believe Manu is going to snap Carol out of this manipulation that she's experiencing with the hive and get her back on his side. And the best shot of the episode is Carol overlooking the grave. It hints that even though time has passed, that they've been living together, Carol and Zosha, the memory of Helen, and of course her death, is never that far away. It's actually right there in the backyard where she's buried. So I don't know if it's a reminder that she is doing this for Helen, because technically the hive was responsible for Helen's death, so she's still holding them responsible for that, or if it's simply her just reflecting on their time together and feeling guilty that she isn't going to avenge the woman she loves, and she's going to stay with Zosha. Maybe Manu will be the one who can remind her of why she wanted to save the world. It's not just about saving everybody, but it's also about getting justice and avenging Helen. But I do love Manu. I love that actor. I think episode 7, because of his performance. I mean, Ray was really good too, but my boy Carlos as this character has been absolutely on fire. What he's able to do with just a minimal amount of dialogue has been so special. And that's why, an actor who can really thrive without dialogue is perfect for Vince Gilligan, because he really does love building up an atmosphere around a character, letting a character's physical acting do the talking for him. That's always been something so impressive about Vince Gilligan's writing, and really impressive about Manu's character. Yeah, and the performances here, with Ray and with Carolina were also great. The two of them do have tremendous chemistry, and I'm really impressed by the character of Zosha, similar to Manu, where it's not so much the lack of dialogue, but it's repeating a lot of the same mannerisms, and it's really fun to see when she breaks with the routine. What are the moments, what are the memories that are going to snap her out of the hive mind and bring her back into who Zosha was. So that's been fascinating to watch, and I think this was another good episode, and the finale is going to release a couple of days early, or one day early, because technically it has been coming out on Thursday night. So they're trying to avoid Christmas. They know old Saint Nick is the star of that is the star of the show that night. So next Wednesday we have the season finale. So just a warning out there for everybody. A lot of people don't watch these until the end, so maybe I should have put that in the beginning. I'm sure they're aware of it. All right, guys, that is going to do it for my review of Pluribus Season 1, Episode 8. Really excited for next week. I hope all of you guys join us, and, we'll see. We'll see what type of cliffhanger they leave us with. And then we'll have another 2 to 3 years until Season 2 comes out, and, everybody will forget about this show, and the ratings will completely plummet, and then it will get canceled. Hopefully they can follow the release schedule of The Pit. So excited for The Pit, dude. Love that. January to January until the fucking sun explodes. I need like 27 seasons of The Pit. I need old Dr. Robbie still fucking, bringing motherfuckers back to life. God, I love The Pit. Such a good show. All right, we'll see you next week, guys. I said we like I'm part of the hive. It's just me. Maybe I'll get Cam and Aaron for the finale. We'll do a little collective review.